Yes, I think Riley is the only one who can record it.
Thank you.
All right, so Tanya, go ahead.
You're muted, Tanya.
Tanya, you're muted.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tanya Torno. I am one of the deputy directors with our county's Department of Housing and Workforce Solutions. And you are joining us today for our pre-bid conference in which we will highlight a new funding opportunity as part of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. A lot of you, and we know them as HUD, is providing communities with funding to support efforts to end homelessness. As was mentioned at the start of this conference by some of my fellow colleagues, we want you to smile. You are on camera, and this session is being recorded. In a few seconds here, I will introduce you to a few of our team members who made today possible, and I will review the agenda, which again, we really were purposeful in making sure that we included information that would help you in preparing for this application process. I will say that because this money comes directly from HUD and is really to support our county efforts to end homelessness, that what you will hear about today is truly about looking at ways that we can enhance our regional and a systematic response to address homelessness. So with that, we welcome you. We know that many of you are representing individual organizations and cities, and we at the county very much look forward to partnering with you and seeing how the prospective projects that you have in mind can collectively, holistically work together to support our efforts in reducing homelessness. So with that said, just a reminder, today's session is being recorded. And while the session itself is non-mandatory, we strongly appreciate your ability to join us today. We also want to share that with it being recorded, we will be sharing the video itself, posting it on our website, so that if you have staff from your teams who weren't able to join today but could benefit from this, you would absolutely be able to share this. And hopefully that means that if there are some agencies not represented here, that they can also take advantage of that opportunity. So welcome. The Continuum of Care division that works under the county's Housing and Workforce Solutions Department welcomes you. We can advance to the next slide, and with that, I'll quickly introduce our staff and partnering department who is here today. You met me, Tanya Torno. We have Natalis, who is our Continuum of Care supervisor, admin services officer, but he really is instrumental in overseeing and directly administering this program. So along with Jamie Gibson, who is our senior program specialist, both of them are truly the subject matter experts when it comes to HUD Continuum of Care funded programs. We also have Brandon Trahan, our administrative services supervisor. You know him as our fiscal supervisor, who is also here and will be joining us at the end of this PowerPoint to provide us with some guidance on the fiscal components of the application. And we're also excited to share with you Monique Guerra, who is our homeless youth coordinator and will also be speaking later in this presentation. Of course, we cannot do the work that we do alone. And alongside each of you, we partner very closely with our county purchasing department, who has helped us develop this presentation, but the RFP itself, and has been instrumental in making sure that the application process remains fair and consistent throughout. So we're very fortunate. Many of you may have remembered Scott Hayden. We now have Riley James, and I can tell you that we absolutely would have not been able to go this far, and as you have seen, roll out for the first time an electronic platform or web-based platform for the application. So that's our team. I'm sure we have others here on the line as well. We are ready and eager to support you. Next slide. So here is an overview of all the things we will be sharing with you today. Again, we really wanted to make sure that you had all the necessary tools and resources to help you through this application process. I do want to prepare you that if this is your first time submitting an application for the HUD Continuum of Care program, there are so many different elements, and the good news is there will be the ability to submit any questions that you have after this presentation through the Rivco Pro website, and Riley James will speak to that at the end of this presentation. But for now, again, as you see on your screen, we really did include a presentation that provided an in-depth overview of available funding, of course, the timeline, in addition to the different eligible components, which we'll speak to, many of which some of you may already be familiar with: permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and supportive services. So you'll get some good information there. And then we'll also talk about our evaluation process, both at the local level and then at the HUD level, because while we will definitely make some work with our Continuum of Care and Board of Governance to make some final recommendations on projects to be funded, ultimately our partners at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development will determine which projects actually receive funding. With that, I'm happy to hand it over to Natalis, who will begin to take us through the available funding, program priorities, and so forth. Thank you, Natalis.
All right, thank you very much, Tanya. And my name is Natalis Ng, and I'm the Administrative Services Officer. And before I start, I want to also recognize that one of our Continuum of Care staff not listed in the earlier slide is also Melanie Wilson, and she's also very instrumental in helping us coordinate this session. And before we post this PowerPoint slide out, and we will definitely make sure that her name is added to the list. And so I'm going to explain to everyone about the HUD's homeless policy priorities and the program highlights. And that is to help all applicants to better understand the selection criteria and how they support the goal of ending homelessness. Next slide, please. All right, so ending homelessness for all persons served, and that is our end goal. So, and then as you can see from on the left-hand side, and then it is to end homelessness. And then the HUD expects the COC to identify, engage, and effectively serve all persons experiencing homelessness. The COCs should also measure our performance based on local data that consider the challenges faced by all subpopulations experiencing homelessness in the geographic area. For example, veterans, youth, families, or all those experiencing chronically homelessness. COCs should also partner with housing, healthcare, and supportive service providers to expand housing options, such as permanent supportive housing, housing subsidies, and rapid rehousing. COCs should use local data to determine the characteristics of individuals and families with the highest needs and longest experiences of homelessness to develop housing and supportive services. that are tailored to their needs. Next slide, please. So here is our approach of using the housing first approach. So, and then the COC program funded projects should help individuals and families move quickly into permanent housing. And the COC should measure and help projects reduce the length of time people experience homelessness. And then the COC should engage landlords and property owners to identify and an inventory of housing available for rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing participants to remove their barriers to entry and adopt client-centered service methods. So as you can see on the screen, and then we want to get people into permanent housing first, and then we will have the case management and support services to help them with all the other challenges that they have, including behavioral health, medical, mental, income, tenant-landlord relationship. And the goal is to help them to maintain their life stability and in their permanent homes. Next slide, please. So reducing unsheltered homelessness. So we want to help people to quickly find housing and pay for housing and find housing within 1 month or less. So, and then that is our goal. It is very, very rapid. Improving system performance should look at the length of homeless episodes, length of time for housing placement, rates of return to homelessness, rates of exit to permanent housing destinations, and to determine how effectively they are serving people experiencing homelessness. Our coordinated entry system should promote participant choice, coordinated homeless assistance, mainstream housing and services, ensures people receiving assistance quickly, and make homelessness assistance open, inclusive, and transparent. And COCs should review all projects eligible for renewal in the financial year 2021 to determine their effectiveness in serving people experiencing homelessness, including cost effectiveness. And we should also look for opportunities to implement continuous quality improvement and other process improvement strategies. COCs should improve how all available resources are utilized to end homelessness. This is especially important as the CARES Act and American Rescue Plan have provided significant new resources to help end homelessness. COCs are encouraged by HUD to maximize the use of mainstream and other community-based resources when serving persons experiencing homelessness and should work closely with public and private healthcare organizations, partner closely with public housing authorities and state and local housing organizations to utilize coordinated entry, develop housing units, and provide housing subsidies to people experiencing homelessness. Partner with local workforce development centers to improve employment opportunities, and work with tribal organizations to ensure that tribal members can access COC-funded assistance when the COC's geographic area border a tribal area. So when it comes to racial equity, that's an important element, and we should review our local policies, procedures, and processes to determine where and how to address racial disparities affecting individuals and families experiencing homelessness. And we are encouraged to include in the local planning process with people who have lived experience of homelessness, whether it is current or former. And that because like when we say that we're helping to address homelessness, we're helping those experiencing homelessness. And then like we want to hear from the people who have experienced it, and then with their insights, we can better help this population that is very much in need. And COCs should seek opportunities to hire people with lived experience, and that's what our COC is striving to do also. And then this is the exciting part. And then so when it comes to requests for proposals, and then oftentimes people are thinking about how much money are we talking about. So, and as you can see on screen, and then in 2021, and we have under domestic violence bonus, and HUD has set aside about $2 million for us, just for Riverside County. And then under the continuum of care bonus, the COC bonus, we have approximately 678,000. So currently, we are still going through the renewal project evaluation and scoring, and then through that scoring, we will be determining which projects will be reallocated alongside with the responses we have got from the letter through the letter of intent to renew from our existing subrecipients. And then right now we are estimating somewhat like anywhere between $2 million or so. Yeah, and then that will be available through the project reallocation process. Next slide, please. So here is the timeline, and then it is quite long. So I'm not going to like read word for word. And then after we have posted the PowerPoint slide, and you will be able to go through this slide more in detail yourself. So and then this table, our process really started before August 30th. But then I think for the purpose of this session, and then I think it is good to explain what has been happening since August 30th. And then we sent out the letter of intent on August 30th, and then September 10th we opened the RFP, and then from between September 10th to the 20th, we will be welcoming questions to through the Rivco Pro, and then we will be posting our questions and responses on September the 21st, and then September the 24th is the deadline for our request for proposals. And then it is a very, very short, approximately from open to end of the RFP, it is about 2 weeks, and then it is a very quick turnaround, and because HUD has a lot of has very tight timeline, and then so tentatively we are looking to to get everything approved on October the 21st in the Board of Governance meeting, and then October 25th, and then these COC we would like to be able to send out a notification to project applicants. After the approval, we would already know the outcomes. And then October the 28th is we want to be able to get everything ready. Yeah, and then to have everything ready, and then to be ready to submit, and then giving ourselves somewhat like a 2-week cushion. And then November 16th is really HUD's deadline for the application submission. All right, so and then so in this non-mandatory pre-bid conference, and then as you have received the bid notification by email, and then when you open the attachment, and then you can see that there are 8 bullet points and 8 links, and then to make it more simple, and then basically 4 of them are COC bonus, and the other 4 of them are DB bonus. So it's the same set of 4 different project types, one set under the COC bonus and the other set under the DB bonus. And then the set of 4, and then I was referring to the permanent supportive housing projects. And permanent housing, rapid rehousing. And there's joint transitional housing and rapid rehousing. There's also supportive services only. So later on in this presentation, we will be explaining like what each component means. So, and then, all of these, and when you click into the Rivco Pro website, and then which in the after I finish talking on this slide, and then Riley from our purchasing department will be doing a live demonstration to show you how you can go from the bid notification through those links, the registration process, and to go into Rivco Pro, and then what Rivco Pro really looks like. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague in purchasing department, Riley James, and who will be helping guiding you through the this process that I just mentioned.
Yeah, thanks, Natalis. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for attending the non-mandatory pre-proposal meeting. I am going to show you how to register as a company with the County of Riverside Rivco Pro portal. Can you all see my screen that says bid notification on the top?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So here's our link of the individual sub RFPs, and the best way, quickest way to access Rivco Pro and create a vendor profile is to click right here, this County of Riverside vendor portal. It will then take you to this website, and you will enter your email address and log in or create a new account here. Now for this presentation, I'm going to do a test account. And as you can see, this is my test email. And it pops up with a beautiful notification saying I do not yet have an account. So I will create an account to register. Let's see. And it should have create account to register. Create account at the bottom. Haha. We're going to continue with the registration. And I have not submitted an invoice. I am with This Is a Test company. You're going to enter your employee ID number or whatever applies as your tax ID. For this example, I'm going to use zeros. If you have a DUNS number, you will go ahead and enter that. My name is going to be Riley James, and my title is a PCS. Of course, this will tailor to your company. My phone number is going to be, let's see, this right here. You're going to put in your time zone, your email. It's pretty straightforward on creating. Let's say get your password. You have a drop down of what you can pick. My first job was a PCS, I wish. Make sure you're not a robot. Click some bus pictures here and create an account. So then it'll prompt you to go back to your email address where you will register, and then it'll ask you individual information that can be anywhere from, please enter your contact information for any of your employees or representatives, what's your address, and additional information. That should be pretty straightforward. If you have any issues, you can reach out to me. My email address is rijames@rivco.org, or you can contact our county clerk's office, which is this email here. Any questions on vendor registration?
So hi, Riley. This is Kimberly McKinney from CVRM.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like 2 years ago, this was sort of brought up. I mean, do we have to, I don't even know if I have my passwords anymore, but do you want us to create a new one?
Okay.
Is this
Yeah, I
a new
know
system?
this Rivco website is newer. Yeah, I'm not sure if your organization has created a vendor profile in public purchase.
I did a couple years ago.
Okay, so this will be new. In addition, the county is, and this is a good question, the county is moving from public purchase to our Rivco Pro website where we post all of our solicitations. So you will create a new profile with the Rivco Pro.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Can you post also, I'm sorry, can you post that URL, please?
Yes, I would be more than happy to. I will do that right now.
And that link is, as demonstrated by Riley earlier, is also on the bid notification, right under the 8 links, to the each RFP, and then right under there, and then there is the link to where that was how Riley started the to go through the registration process.
That's
And
good
I
to
see
hear.
that
Thank you for that.
Florence White has a hand up.
Oh, you are on mute.
Florence, if you're speaking, you're
There we go.
on.
I am unable to unmute you, Florence. My apologies.
Okay,
You
how
might-
about that? How about
There
now?
we go.
All right,
Beautiful.
sorry about that. I tried to, I registered, but when I clicked on the link to get the notification, I had the bid, but it didn't give me, it just kind of went to a, I think I sent an email over to someone yesterday.
That was
that
me, I believe.
Was that you? Okay. I wasn't able to access anything. So is that something different now when I click onto that link, once I'm into the portal? I should be
Yeah,
able to pull up
so
the RFP?
the intent was to make it as easy as possible for everybody. So if you clicked on the Rivco RFP number or Rivco Pro RFP name, it would
I
take you directly to that specific RFP. Well, as continuous improvement, that did not work. So we made sure to include the vendor pro portal link at the bottom. But again, if, I do apologize
No need.
for that. If you still have problems, feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Okay, because I wasn't able to do it as of this morning. I still wasn't able to access it. So is it that, so your complete profile in Rivco has to be completed, like your cage number and everything, because there was a lot of that information from your SAM account that needed
Yes.
to be brought over. If all of your SAM information is not brought over into the new Rivco setup, would that disallow you to access the RFP?
No, that shouldn't. If it does, let's have a conversation. You can call me. And
Thank
when in this training, if Florence, if you could go into the chat box and click on that link I just included,
Okay.
that should take you directly to Rivco Pro. If you haven't seen that yet, and if you have, we can work together to get this solved.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And I see in the chat box that Marianne and another person agreed. So there are 2 thumbs up regarding that the Rivco Pro is an improvement from public purchase website. So, and then thank you for recognizing that. And then we hope that that would be an easier process and an improvement for everyone.
Okay, next slide. Good questions, guys. Thank you very much.
So we're going to hand things over to Tanya, our Deputy Director, in addition to Monique Guerra.
All right. So we thought really before getting into the details of what the funding that could be used for, that we could share some potential project needs and ideas. With that said, again, these are some ideas that we listed here because they would support existing projects that have been approved, supported through our continuum of care. But with that said, we definitely hope that these ideas will only inspire you and help sort of, put you in the right direction, but absolutely know that you are not restricted to these 3 different strategies. Our HUD Continuum of Care programs can be used to support supportive services only projects in both consulting with our HUD representative and our HUD consultant, Joe Coletti, who many of you know. SSO, again, supportive service only projects, are really geared towards leveraging or supporting existing housing projects that perhaps do not fund supportive service programs. And so we wanted to highlight both our regular Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program and Emergency Housing Voucher Program, which have targeted individuals or rental assistance vouchers to individuals who are experiencing homelessness. As an example, our emergency housing voucher program in Riverside County supports rental assistance to 347 individuals who are unsheltered and will be connected to a subsidy. While we're excited about being able to serve 347 individuals, that program is not tied to supportive services. And in speaking to what Natalis referenced earlier, people absolutely need housing, but they also need supportive services. We thought that this program could be used to directly fund service providers who are interested in providing supportive services to individuals who are connected directly from street into a voucher program through the Housing Authority. So definitely something for you guys to consider. We're happy to help facilitate a connection between your agency and the Housing Authority so you can brainstorm some more. So again, supportive services only projects are absolutely encouraged, but they should not be supported independently without a direct housing element or strategy. The second one is, of course, this funding can be used to support existing DOC projects. We have a lot of good permanent supportive housing programs that are already demonstrating good outcomes. And so the idea really here is to incentivize those programs that already have good developments in both, identifying housing for individuals, recruiting landlords, as an example, in addition to providing a holistic, wraparound supportive service model with continuing to expand the number of beds that they currently have in their existing projects. The last one really speaks to creating programs that target solutions for specific populations, such as homeless youth, families, seniors, veterans, and of course can include other special populations. With that said, we thought it would be helpful to invite our homeless youth coordinator, Monique Guerra, to talk about youth homelessness specifically for a few minutes and to share on some of the feedback she has received from Youth Action Board members who meet regularly to discuss the needs of youth who are experiencing homelessness today. So with that, Monique, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. So I just want to remind us all of the 2020 point in time count and remembering that our unsheltered youth number was 256, our families with children were 70, and our seniors were 175. So when we think about these projects, we really want to be inclusive and have a purpose and a meaning to everything that we're doing. And so when we think about youth and our youth projects, right, expanding not only permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, but also doing that for youth. And like Tanya had mentioned, wrapped around services for youth that are dealing also with abuse, also dealing with domestic violence, being trafficked. Our LGBTQ plus population also needs housing. So based off of our YHGP grant, which was the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project grant that we submitted in July, we got a lot of really good feedback from our youth, from other programs in the community, and from other focus groups that were conducted by, for example, Operation Safe House. And so some of that feedback is, who are your homeless youth? And then how did they become homeless? And we all know that homelessness isn't linear, right? Homelessness happens through many pathways, especially for our youth. And so anywhere from transitioning out of foster care to being kicked out of their home for not being accepted because of their gender or sexuality, identifying as transgender and not being accepted into shelters. So knowing that not only is there the barrier of housing and limited housing, but we have these marginalized groups who suffer from other aspects that really come about with their housing needs. And so some of our youth really said that if we were able to provide more TAY shelters or more TAY beds for those transitions, right? And if we use the HUD definition for transitioning youth, it's 18 to 24. So having more housing models such as Operation Safe House, TOP programs, not only for foster youth, but at-risk and homeless youth, and also being able to provide supportive services to prevent homelessness for our youth population. So being able to get them into some sort of housing model, such as Inspire Life Skills Training, which if you haven't heard of it, you can look them up on their website. And their housing models are homes. There are homes that they rent out that have 3 to 5 bedrooms, and they rent those bedrooms out to the youth. Some are shared and some are just like Inspire has 2 homes for those that identify as female and those that identify as male. And so this kind of housing model, right, being able to rent rooms to youth who are just in need, and then being able to provide wraparound services, whether that's like mental health services, schooling services, finding a job. And so being able to provide a youth with everything that they need in one place, but first providing them with housing, I think it is essential. So as we think about these projects, thinking about how we can incorporate our youth into these projects and our vulnerable groups, right? Our LGBTQ youth, our youth suffering from domestic violence, our youth suffering from being trafficked. And so if we were to improve some of the programs that are already in existence, it would just be like capacity building. It would be making sure that we're able to provide services, wraparound services in one spot for youth, so that they're not having to go to multiple places and then kind of fall through those cracks. And so just bridging that gap between service, resource, and the youth, and just remembering that youth want to be connected to people, not just services. So right, when we encounter youth and when we're thinking about what kind of projects to come about with, right, thinking about if those were, right, if that was my family member, if that was my child, right, how do we want to take care of youth and their needs? First, by engaging them and making sure that we understand what is needed. So just some thoughts. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
very,
you,
very
Monique.
much, Jamie, Monique, and Tanya. And I would also like to add some points to it, and on this slide. And so this slide, and please use this slide as examples. And then, as you may have noticed, that we use terms such as or etc. And please do not let these limit your project types. So for example, Tanya has talked about the supportive services only, and the example we're giving is to support existing housing voucher programs, but then it can also be used for outreach programs, case management, employment programs, anything to support a person to support a person to obtain and maintain permanent housing. So, and if you go for the supportive services, remember the linkage back to permanent housing, because the end is to end homelessness. So without that linkage, and then the project may come across as weak. So remember the linkage. Whatever supportive services, the services are to support the person to permanent housing and to end their homelessness. And then expansion projects, and because like our existing projects, and they're typically renewed year after year, and then they're typically renewed as is. But hey, my project has been renewed for 5 years, 6 years, and then funding level, yes, there is a slight increase in the fair market rent, but then that's about it. But then hey, I've been doing well. I want to increase some beds and units. I want to expand into more supportive services, and then I want to, and then the more you expand, and then by creating a new project that is an expansion project to your existing one, and then you would be able to create, like, to make your project a healthier funded project. And then after being approved, awarded, and funded, and then in the future renewals, and you can consider like consolidating your existing project with this expansion project to become one project again. So, and then that's how we can grow the COC program projects. And then one big population we have not mentioned, it's not showing on this slide, is the domestic violence. And then, but because remember, we have been talking about, and Jamie will be talking about the domestic violence bonus. And then domestic violence can happen to youth, families, and seniors, and veterans, and all those populations that we have mentioned. So, and then so think about, like, so please don't let this slide limit your thoughts, and pay attention to what Jamie is going to introduce, the project type, and then as long as it fits in those category, and feel free to apply. And so go ahead, Jamie. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Natalis, for the additional info, and thank you, Monique, for talking about our youth homelessness population. My name is Jamie Gibson. I am a senior program specialist with the county's Continuum of Care division. And before I get into the eligible components, I just wanted to set a reminder, possibly for those who may be on the phone and may not see the chat box. We would like for you to include your information if you have jumped onto this meeting and have not done so. If you don't have access to our chat, please feel free to email the coc@rivco.org to let us know your name and organization via email, so that way we can count your attendance. So I will be talking to you all about eligible components that we have here with the HUD COC NOFO. Next slide, please, Melanie. The first component will be our DV bonus, which is our domestic violence bonus. Go ahead, Mel. So currently, as we talked about before in the beginning of available funding, that HUD has allocated up to about $2 million for Riverside's Continuum of Care. And as a caution here, COCs may apply for any number of projects, provided that each new application is at least for $50,000. So there is a minimum on there. And applicants may submit a new DV bonus application for one of the following project types, such as PSH, or permanent supportive housing, the permanent housing rapid rehousing projects, supportive services only, or SSO, or joint transitional housing rapid rehousing projects. Joint transitional housing and permanent housing rapid rehousing component projects combine two existing program components into a single project to serve individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness. Next slide, please. New projects that want to be considered for this DV or domestic violence bonus may be permanent housing, rapid rehousing. Just some definitions here for permanent housing is dedicated to serving survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking that are defined as homeless. And in each of these definitions, we will provide you the Code of Federal Regulation as an additional resource for you to look at. Joint transitional housing and permanent housing, rapid rehousing component projects are defined in section 3, B as in boy, 2Q of the NOFA, and that is dedicated to serving survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking who are defined as homeless. Or there's our supportive services only coordinated entry projects. And those are to implement policies, procedures, and practices that equip the Continuum of Care's coordinated entry to better meet the needs of survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. Next slide, please. Uh-oh. Thank you. Oh, one back, thanks. And just as a Code of Federal Regulation under Part 5 CFRs, any individual is, domestic violence is defined as any individual or family who's fleeing or is attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or other dangerous or life-threatening conditions that relate to violence against the individual or a family member, including a child, that has either taken place within the individual's or family's primary nighttime residence or has made the individual or family afraid to return to their primary nighttime residence. Next slide, please. The definition continues on as has no other residence and lacks the resources or support networks such as family, friends, and faith-based or other social networks to obtain other permanent housing. And again, that is a reference to the Code of Federal Regulations, which we have some resources at the end of this presentation. Next slide. I think back one, Mel, maybe. Thank you. So this is the point system for the component projects and how that breaks down for rapid rehousing, joint transitional housing, and permanent housing rapid rehousing component projects is going to be divided into 3 sections, which is our COC score. That's up to 50 points in direct proportion to the score received on the application. The second component would be the need for the project. We would award up to 25 points based on the extent that the COC quantifies the need for the project in its portfolio, the extent of the need, and how the project will fill that gap. And the third component being quality of the project applicant. Up to 25 points for this section as well, and that's based on the previous performance of the applicant in serving survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking, and their ability to house survivors and meet safety outcomes. And then rapid rehousing and joint transitional housing with permanent housing rapid rehousing component. Those projects must follow a housing first approach, of course. For supportive services only projects for coordinated entry to implement policies, procedures, and practices that will equip the Continuum of Care's coordinated entry to better meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness who are survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. This component for points is divided into 2 sections, which will be up to 50 points in direct proportion to the score received on the application. And then the need for the project, which is up to 50 points as well, based on the extent to which the COC demonstrates the need for a coordinated entry system that better meets the needs of survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and how the project will fill this need. Next slide, please. HUD will conditionally select new domestic violence bonus projects, and that's including new domestic violence bonus projects that are part of an expansion, and that will pass project eligibility and project quality threshold in accordance with the criteria that's established in the notice of funding opportunity, and that would be the section that we've referenced here in the NOFO. Go ahead and advance. Thank you. And the COC, or Continuum of Care bonus, is the other eligible component. This section is given to Riverside Continuum of Care up to $678,000. The continuum of care is eligible to apply for up to 5% of the final prorated need, or the FPRN. New projects that are created through the continuum of care bonus must meet the project eligibility and project quality threshold requirements that's established in the notice of funding opportunity. The continuum of care is eligible to receive the COC bonus project if it ranks projects based on how they improve system performance as outlined in the notice of funding opportunity as well. Next slide, please. New project applications may be created through the reallocation process or as a COC bonus project. So like Natalis had mentioned earlier, there is an approximate dollar amount of $2 million for reallocation, in addition to what we've just disclosed here of the $678,000 for COC bonus. Those projects can include permanent housing, permanent supportive housing projects, permanent housing rapid rehousing projects, joint transitional housing, and permanent housing rapid rehousing component projects, in addition to HMIS and supportive services only coordinated entry projects. Next slide. Prior to completing a new project created through the reallocation process or our bonus process, project applicants will need to or should consult with the continuum of care to determine which of the options will be available in the local competition. And with those two eligible components, I'm going to hand this back to our purchasing team with Riley, as well as our fiscal supervisor, Brandon Trahan.
Hi, everyone. I am Brandon Trahan. I am the Administrative Services Supervisor for our HHPWS Continuum of Care Fiscal Unit. And it's great to see all of y'all. Definitely good to have so much interest in our NOFO. So we wanted to first give you a live demonstration of the budget portion in Rivco Pro of the application. And so I have Riley James in purchasing here to help out with that.
Again, okay, so yeah, and Brandon, help me out here. So what we're asking for when you are in the RFP viewing the event, you'll go down to items. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, that's what I thought. So give me a second to troubleshoot this here. 1 second, please.
Riley, while you're doing that, I forgot to mention to the group, for some people who are just joining, we are also asking that all questions during this conference be submitted through Rivco Pro, and we will work to consolidate those questions and answers for the group.
And for those people who signed in a little bit later, and if you have not done so yet, please put your name, organization name in the chat box.
Definitely. And, you know, I do see so many great organizations here. Very glad to see you all here. And I believe we'll be up momentarily, just a little troubleshooting with our Rivco Pro system.
Yes.
It is a new system.
We are very excited, and we can't wait to see the new project proposals, and then like the domestic violence definitely strong need there, because now with my name and my phone number and email address listed on the HUD website and on the state website, and I do get inquiry on a daily basis, and then very often, and then people are reaching out and looking for help, and a lot of them are like families, and then some of them are fleeing from domestic violence, and then when I think about domestic violence, and then a lot of them are really hidden, and then so now, and then in the chat box, and then like thank you for recognizing, and yes, we think about youth, we think about transgender, and then that adds another layer of difficulty, and then when I think about like runaway homeless youth, yeah, so why do they run away? And then before they run away, they must have gone through a lot of domestic violence. So I can only imagine. So and then if we think that like right now it is difficult time with COVID for everyone, and then if we think like we are going through hardship, and then those people would have layers and layers and layers more barriers on top of what everybody goes through. And then we definitely would like to make this opportunity for new projects really address those needs.
Absolutely. It's definitely one of the things that I've learned since joining the COC is just there's so many different types of need out there, different groups that have need for different reasons, and every individual has their own story. Every individual has their own reason for why they need help. And so it's good to have these different kinds of projects out there. And that's something that I really like to see from all of our funding, is to just have the different so many different projects that can really reach every person's need.
Okay, we're here, but your screen's going to be a little bit different. I'll share my screen and kind of address what we are looking for. So here's your line items. You'll go into the solicitation. At the top left, you'll see the solicitation name and RFP number that was assigned. And you'll go down here to the items tab, and you can see there are 55 items that the county is requesting to be filled out. There are no product line items. There is only service line items, as you can see by the number. You'll go ahead and click that tab. Here we're going to have our group 1, our group 2, and we can increase our page limit so we can see all groups. And we can see the remaining groups on the second page, the budget group and the match group. So starting from the beginning, we're asking to see the full-time equivalent. And in order to enter the cost correctly, we are asking the departments to enter the quantity of staff that will be entered. So this one will be available to adjust. And then we're asking for the unit item price, which would also be the each price, the price per FTE. So if you have 10 full-time employees designated for this rental assistance, you would enter a quantity of 10 and then enter their each price. So if there is, we would recommend that if there are different prices, so let's say you have an intern at $10 an hour and a senior staff member at 15 and an executive at 20, you would enter the average and enter 3. So you would have 3 individuals, which is available to enter, and then you would enter $15. You would also be able to specify the differences of each section in the scope of services tab or in a financial statements area. I believe that will be the same for all groups, the budget group, and we are also asking for, Brandon, you want to go over any of this? I know you want to.
Sure.
You're supposed to speak.
I will go over a little bit of this here. So we do see our staffing costs related to the different categories here, and all of these categories are correlated to our different budget categories. And you'll see under supportive services, you have different types of supportive services, and those are going to be laid out. As we'll see in a little bit, those are actually laid out in the Code of Federal Regulations, the types of supportive services that you can provide. So we have that there so you can take a look at it and see what staffing that you're going to have for each of those. And Riley, just to be correct as well, let's say we were to have an agency wanted to have 2 staff working half of their time on the grant. That would be an FTE of 1, right?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, let's say that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
We'll
I
have to
would
do
say
that.
that to make the math easier, and then if I'm thinking, oh, okay, so for this project I have 10 physical staff members, and then each have different levels of FTE. Some are half-time, some 0.25, and then all together, and then the 10 people make up, let's say, 4 FTE, something like that. So, and then I would say you can do backward also, and then like separately you can do, okay, how many FTEs, and then across the different categories, of course, they have different salary ranges, and then when you calculate the whole lump sum, and then the whole lump sum divided by all those FTE, and then there you have the unit price, and then you have the quantity for how many FTE, the unit price, and then the lump sum. And then so Brandon and Riley, would it be appropriate to say that, like, at this point, we important is the total category amount and the total proposed amount, and then the breakdown in between, the breakdown within each category. And then at this point, we only want to get the idea, right? And then because and then based on that, we will be evaluating on all that stuff. But then when it comes to contracting, as long as we are not too far off, and then without really changing the category total sum dollars and the total requested proposal, and then I think we have a slight flexibility within, right? Because we have a very quick turnaround of 2 weeks. I don't want people to get bogged down to be like very precise and therefore delaying their process. Is what I just described accurate, or what do you think?
I would agree. And so I believe you're referring to the fact, for example, your supportive services. The most important thing is that we know how much your dollar amount is going to be for supportive services, because that's what's actually going to be in HUD's budget. But in terms of the breakdown among, let's say case management, or let's say childcare, it is something, certainly we want that as accurate as possible, but the most important thing would be to have the different categories, your leasing, rental assistance, supportive services, all of those, to make sure that we have that information.
Yeah, the big line item, the big budget line items. Yeah, so and then the breakdown within each, and we can be a little bit more flexible.
Right. And so that's going to be our full-time equivalents. And can we go to our next group and take a look at some of those?
Budget.
So I believe your other budgets here, that's going to be, again, those line items, your leased units, your rental assistance, your different types of supportive services. So that's going to be what we're looking for there.
Again, everything is available for the quantity to be adjusted and the price to be updated.
Excellent.
Let's go here. There we go.
And then, of course, we have our HMIS, different types of services there, our administrative cost, which is capped at 10% of the grant. And finally, we want to make sure to know how much of that match is going to be cash or in kind. And we'll talk a little bit more about match in a moment.
That's it from the cost summary edition.
Excellent. Thank you, Riley. So I believe we'll be returning to our PowerPoints.
Yeah, while we are doing that, I want to highlight that other than the FTE and then the other items, and then if you really cannot quantify it, and then you can leave it as one and then put in the lump sum. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I believe we have a hand raised here. Should we go ahead, Natalis, and
I would say Florence, and then if we can let Brandon finish this portion, and then we will get back to you. Is it okay? Yeah, and then meanwhile, in between, I think feel free to type your question in the chat box, and then by the time Brandon is finished, and then we will get back to you. So, and then so Melanie, are you putting up the PowerPoint slide, please?
Excellent.
I want to steal the screen one more time. I was able to log in. So in addition to what Brandon went over, I'll show you how it looks via vendor profile.
Okay,
Here's
great.
our item 1. Let's say we have 10 FTEs at an average of $10 a piece. And then we're going to put the estimated service start date, which would be the same start date as the grant funding. And Natalis, I believe that is February 1st.
February 1st, 2022 is the earliest possible.
And that'll be a response to this item.
But then in reality, I hope it's not going to be $10 unit price because it's below minimum wage.
Yes, yes. It says for an example. So then we would go ahead and enter, you know, if we're having a hard time calculating, like Natalia said, you would enter $1 and 10,000 with a start date of 2.
And just to clarify and make sure, so we should be putting the hourly rate, not the annual rate, right?
Ask that one more time, Brandon. Apologies.
So just to clarify which pay rate we should be putting in, would that be the hourly rate or the annual rate?
The hourly rate, please. And if it
Okay.
is an annual rate, it would be a quantity of 1.
Okay.
1, it's you know, it's quantity 1 because it's 1 fiscal year.
Okay. Makes sense. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else we should take a look at before we move on to the PowerPoint?
No, that is it. Thank you.
Great. And while we get that PowerPoint back up, do we want to, I do see a question in here that I'll go ahead and cover. What is the term of the grant? That grant term is going to be 12 months. Okay, great. So we can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Melanie. And definitely our technical difficulties. I think we've all had to deal with them over the past year or so, but thank you for staying with us. So important information about our match here. Match is a requirement for all COC HUD grants. So what we're gonna need is the subrecipient will match all grant funds except for leasing funds with at least 25% either of their own funds or in-kind contributions from other sources. That 25% is a statutory requirement in the Code of Federal Regulations. And what we're actually going to request is, because there may be an increase in fair market rent, we want to be prepared ahead of time. So if we would request that you provide commitment documentation ahead of time at a 30% match. And that way, if that fair market rent amount increases a little bit, we'll already be covered ahead of time.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm going to jump back in here again and talk to everyone about the local evaluation process.
Okay, great.
Next slide, Melanie. So all of our all the new projects that we will receive from this submission, which would be our deadline of September 24th, will receive a thorough minimum threshold review. And that minimum threshold review criteria is stated on the RFP information. So you'll find that information in the Rivco Pro website. Next slide. For the evaluation and scoring process, of course, we are convening an independent review panel of non-conflicted members who will be convening and reviewing proposals that have met that minimum threshold criteria that's set. And that review panel will also score and rank each application using our scoring criteria. The highest possible score will be 100 points. And for the request for proposals, the result recommendations are planned to be presented for approval at our Board of Governance or BOG meeting on October 21st, 2021 for inclusion in fiscal year 2021 Continuum of Care program competition application. And the final award selection will be made by HUD in 2022. The disclaimer below, county reserves the right to split or make the award that is most advantageous to the county. Next slide, please. For the HUD funding process, we'll talk about the Tier 1 and Tier 2. And the purpose for that is for Continuum of Cares to notify HUD which projects are prioritized for funding based on local needs and gaps. So we have our Tier 1 and Tier 2 information. Tier 1 is going to be equal to 100% of the Continuum of Care's annual renewal demand, or the ARD. Project applications that are in Tier 1 will be conditionally selected from the highest scoring Continuum of Care to the lowest scoring Continuum of Care, provided the project applications pass both project eligibility and project quality threshold review, and if applicable, project renewal threshold. For the Tier 2, this would be the difference between our Tier 1 and the maximum amount of renewal reallocation and the COC bonus funds that the COC can apply for. This is not including amounts available for the domestic violence bonus projects. Next slide, please. HUD will be the ones to award a point value to each new and renewal project application that is in Tier 2 using a 100-point scale. The three components that break this down would be the COC score of up to 50 points in direct proportion to the score received on the COC application. The next would be COC project ranking. That's up to 40 points for the COC's ranking of project application or applications. And our third component is the commitment to housing first, which is up to 10 points. That's based on the project application's commitment to follow a housing first approach. Next slide, please. So in conclusion and wrapping this up, we ask that all of the questions be submitted through Rivco Pro, and we are putting a deadline on this of September 20th. So all questions must come through the website, and those questions and responses will be consolidated, and those responses that are coming from the COC staff will be posted the following day, September 21st. That will be on the COC NOFO website in addition to Rivco Pro. And one more slide for me, please. This last slide here will give you some links to the resources that we've discussed today. The following being the notice of funding opportunity, in addition to the bid notification that has your Rivco Pro link where you can view the RFPs, as well as that vendor link to set up your account. There are some additional resources with the Code of Federal Regulations concerning supportive services, operations, and the HMIS, which is our homeless management information system. In addition to that, if you have any issues, technical support, or questions, we do ask that you contact our purchasing department, Riley James, who's been greatly added into this conversation and our conference to provide additional support, which we certainly appreciate, making everything go virtual. So his contact information is there, rijames@rivco.org. And with that, we would like to thank everyone in attendance. I know that there is still a hand up, so I'm not sure, Riley, if you want to have Florence speak before we conclude.
Yep, I just want to add to what Jamie said. Please reach out to me. Do not reach out to anybody else in the county. I am your point of contact. So if you have any questions, we ask that they are submitted through Rivco Pro before the deadline. And if there's any vendor registration problems, please let me know. Florence, you have the floor. Thank you for waiting and being so patient.
Oh, no, it's all me. I'm so sorry, everybody, because most of my questions probably can be, I'll post them, of course, as instructed. But I was wondering if there was a cap. I know you talk about the overall amount that is available that the county has available, but is there a cap that each applicant can apply for? I saw what the DV, the less amount that the DV bonus has to start at, the baseline amount. Is there a cap on the funding? And then the second question I had is, this is new, so is there a training time, that number of hours that you have is estimated for a new user? So if the whole application is going into this platform, I got different pieces. You got your narrative part, you got your budget part. Is everything being collapsed into the new platform here? And the training time to do that, because you got 2 weeks to write it up, and then but you got to learn it as well. So can you speak on that any at all?
Yeah. So the answer to your second question is, I know it is a new platform, and it is a tight deadline, but we have our certain time constraints. So we just ask that do the best you can. Please allow some type of time if there are technical difficulties. We'd recommend that submitting 2 minutes before the deadline might not be the best approach. So submitting before that is the best idea. And then we'll answer your first question if you can just submit that through Rivco Pro, please.
And I see Karen Young Low also has a hand up.
Yes, thanks, Natalis. Thank you, Riley, for your for kind of walking us through this. But I just wanted to ask a question. I'm on the site right now, and I'm in the one that says Continuum of Care Bonus, New Permanent Housing, Rapid Rehousing. But when I scroll all the way down, in order to go to the group S2 budget, you know, where we're supposed to put our units, it says leased units. So, so do we use that if we're just talking about leased units, whether it's leasing or whether we're going to do leasing or whether we're going to do rental assistance? Because it doesn't appear to give a choice.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. If you could ask that, and Rivco Pro will answer it, and we'll make sure everybody has the same information. We'll make sure that the items tab is up to date.
Okay.
But
So
bringing that up.
Okay, great. So all of our Rivco Pro, I think you just said it, you want us to send, do we send those questions directly to you, Riley, or do we send them to the question platform?
Yeah, great question. So we ask everything to be submitted through the Q&A platform through Rivco Pro before the Q&A deadline.
Okay.
And I can show you what that looks like real fast if you guys
that would be
like.
helpful. Thank you.
Sure. So here we are in the domestic violence new supportive services. I'm looking at this from a vendor's point of view. We'll go down here all the way to the Q&A board, and then we'll go here and ask a question. And then we can type in our question, blah, blah, blah. And we can have an attachment as well. I don't want to ask anything because I'm not quite, an actual vendor. Then you have an option to see the questions that you were submitted and buyer questions. Most of the questions and everybody's questions should appear here. This questions tab here is our questionnaires. These are the questions that we as a county ask the companies or proposers to answer in order to submit a proposal. Susan has a question, and Florence, do you still have a question?
Hi, this is Susan. Actually, question S2.3, which is a couple items after the leasing, refers to rental assistance. So I think that we would probably leave the leasing at 0 and enter our information in the rental assistance.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And we will still and then so to get the full answer, and please still submit that question, and then so that would allow the COC staff to give to give the response, and then that way we can make it available to everyone.
Yep. You can see what 2.3 here. If this still doesn't answer your question, ask it through the Q&A board, and we'll make sure that it's updated and it's taken care of for you.
All right. And then I still see one hand up. Oh, that's still Susan. Okay, so all right. So with that, and then we would like to thank everyone for your participation, and we look forward to your questions in the Q&A Ask a Question platform, and pay attention to the posting that will be posted on September the 21st. And we very much look forward to your exciting new project proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Riley, please, we can stop the recording now.
Good idea.